Okay, so we talked about offense. We talked about defense. So what's the special teams? What is that?
Special teams is investing.
Okay.
Right? This is the end result. This is the why. Everything leads up to here. And I think this is the financial maturity when you get to this place. And I think once you get to a place where you're financially more intelligent and mature and you really focus, everything goes back to this third team. Everything for us is all based on our special teams. That is the only thing that matters. We are doing an offense and a defense for the only purpose of special teams.
Welcome back to the Donkey and the Bee. We got the bee here and we got the donkey, which makes the donkey and the bee work together. Here we go. Today we are talking about not fantasy football, but financial football.
Financial football. Right. So I really love this analogy about football for your finances. And so I want to unpack this today. Ultimately, how we take the game of football and how you would coach a football team, and we put that towards our finances, really with the end goal of here is how we create financial freedom. Here is how we get out of the rat race. And that's by taking a look at this like you would a football team and having multiple teams and multiple offense and defense and special teams and plays and things you got to run. And ultimately, they're not all on the field at the same time. So I want to unpack this today because I think it's very applicable. And I think even if you don't follow football, it'll still be applicable as a great analogy for taking control of your finances and implementing this financial football into an actionable steps for you to get to the end result of I have now financial independence. I'm not working for the man. I'm out of the rat race kind of thing.
So where did this come from? I mean, we watch football. We're very keen on watching football. We just love it. We don't have a team, but we just love watching it. So how did this come about?
I don't know. I think I just thought it up. I'm sure somebody has thought it before me, but I've never heard somebody talk about it. So okay. I'm going to take credit for it.
Wow. Yeah. You got to trademark that?
Yeah. Boom. Stamped it.
Yeah. All right. Well, what is it? What is this financial football?
Okay. So I think of football, right? You have actually three different teams, right? You have your offensive team, your defensive team, and then your special teams. And there's some overlap between these players, right? Sometimes they play, offense and special teams. But ultimately, you really have guys that are made for defense. They're big dudes, right? They're like, here's your defensive guys. And then you have other people who they're trained for offense, right? They specifically play offense. They specifically play defense. When you talk about finances, everyone seems to go into like this Dave Ramsey kind of mentality of I'm going to cut up my credit cards. I'm going to, budget. I'm going to get to this place of, I'm debt free. And that's the finish line. Like, that's it. Like I'm there. Right. And the way I look at that, I think that's all fantastic, actionable ideas and items, but really it's all on the defensive team. If you looked at this at a football game, it's literally you only have a defense team, right? Like you may have the most rock star defensive team, but after, 4 downs and, you get the ball back, you don't have an offense, right? So you're literally punting again. And now your defense is still on the field. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to, 3 and out and they're going to, turn over the ball. And then what? I don't have a quarterback. I don't have an offense. So I'm punting the ball again. And it's like, it is literally impossible to win a football game without an offensive team, right? Like maybe you can have a pick six, but nonetheless, the other team, they got a quarterback, they got an offense, they're running plays, right? Like how do you win at financial football without an offense?
So I'm literally a visual person and I'm visualizing the defensive team, big dudes, right? Like 6'5", 325 pounds, like just like big dudes on the offensive line. And they're running and they're trying to catch the ball that's being thrown to them and they can't make it. Like they're just big dudes. They're just not built for that. And so I don't know, sorry. I thought that was a really funny visual that you just implanted in my mind. So I just had to say.
Well, good, because it doesn't make sense,
yeah.
Right? If you never have a quarterback, how is it possible to score a touchdown? right? Like, okay, yeah, there's a fluke, so you're going to have it every now and again, but you're not going to have a winning season. You're not going to get to the playoffs, right? Like, you're going to suck.
Yeah.
You may have the best defense, but if all you have is defense, if you don't have an offense, you don't have a quarterback, you're not running any plays, you're not drilling on this, how do you expect to get in the end zone?
Yeah. So you're saying pretty much in short terms, your finances suck if you're only on the defense.
That's right.
Okay.
Or it's very immature or one-dimensional. But ultimately, like, you are never going to save your way to financial freedom. You can only save so much of your budget, right? Like, you have to spend money. So ultimately, how are you going to get to a place where you can invest? So we'll talk about investing, because I think the special teams is almost like you're investing. That's your investment team.
Okay, so if we just talked about defense, so what would you say is the offensive team?
Offense is income.
Okay.
Right? So you have your defense is your spending, your expenses, budgeting, those type of things. Offense is income, increasing your income, bringing in side hustles, getting promotions, whatever it is, you have to have plays and strategies for that, ultimately making more money.
So I just kind of want to break down the increasing income. I think a lot of people, when they hear that term of increasing income, they think, okay, I just have to get a raise. And that's
part of it.
It's part of it, but that's not only what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
I think that's important to say, that it's not just that, it's also side gigs or things you're picking up on the side on the weekend. And it doesn't have to be massive amounts of money. It could be $200 here, $200 there. But accumulation after time will be a lot. And so I just wanted to point that out, that it doesn't have to be in your current job. It could be elsewhere as well.
Of course, yeah. So you think of a football team, your offensive team, right? They don't only have one play, right? You talked about this, your first inclination that, I need to get a raise. I would consider that's your one play. You have multiple plays, right? A whole book full of plays. The more advanced you are, if you're like, Pee-wee football, you might only have 2-3 plays, right? And that's kind of how you start out in your financial intelligence. But there are many ways to make money. And if we're talking about multiple streams of income, if you're talking about, as you get more advanced and mature in financial intelligence, then you are investing and now you have those streams of income coming in. Ultimately, like that, we're at a place where we have many streams of income that come in, right? We have our active businesses, that's a majority of it, but then lots of little trickles of income. And that's a more mature and advanced thing that we didn't start with, right? It took many years to get to where we're at to be able to have that. But there's lots of different plays that you would use, your offense would use, and there's lots of different ways in real life that as you are learning, a student of the game, just like you be a student of football, you're a student of finance, you're a student of entrepreneurship. There's lots of different ways and plays that you can make more money.
I think there's almost no excuse for individuals, especially in 2024, where we're at currently, and even back 5 years, with everything at your fingertips. If you're on YouTube, you see I'm holding my phone, but if you're not on YouTube and you're listening to podcasts, I'm holding my phone. This little bad boy here has literally everything you need to know. I mean, you can YouTube anything. You can listen to a podcast about anything. You can literally self-teach yourself on any topic that you want to learn about. It's just taking the action and the steps to actually do it.
Well, can we talk about this Costco mom?
Oh,
you showed me this lady on Instagram who's like, her whole page is
Costco finds.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. She's just showing things that are at Costco, right? Yeah. I go to Costco all the time. I know what's there. Yeah. I know there's some cool stuff a lot of times, but her whole job or a side gig or whatever it is, right? It's some type of play that she's using to bring in income.
Yeah.
And she's, got a couple million followers there.
Yeah, exactly. So she was just going to Costco, had her phone and thought, oh, look, I'm here. Look at what's new here at Costco. And then found out that a lot of people like watching that and then went with it. And I know she's got a lot of income coming in just from that. That could just be her side gig.
Right.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with, I just need to go get a raise. That's one possible option. You should be considering that. But man, the world is so different than it used to be 10 years ago. And when we were kids, like the amount of ways you can make money now is just silly. Like it doesn't matter what age you are. Actually, there's that older gentleman who has a YouTube channel that reads kids' books. And our girls, instead of reading the book themselves, they go on YouTube and it's like Books with Grandpa or something.
Something like that, yeah.
And it's like this, he's 70s?
Yeah.
Mid 70s, He's got his own YouTube channel reading elementary kids books that they're supposed to read, right? And like getting tons of watch time because they're reading a whole book in front of these kids.
Yeah.
So no excuses. It doesn't matter what age you are. There's not a legitimate excuse to say, oh, technology is for the younger generation. No, this guy's in mid 70s reading books like he's grandpa to a bunch of little elementary school kids.
Exactly.
There's no excuse.
Yes. You always have time for things that are important to you. If it's important to you to be financially successful or financially just getting back your finances, I think that you will make time for it. And the people who say, oh, I don't have time to watch those YouTube videos, I don't have time to read that book, you can make time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, practical steps towards your offensive team. This is the way I think of it. I think you should start with obviously where you're at. You have some type of income. You should have a goal of a line one goal of 10% increase. After you get to 10%, I think you need to have some type of plan and multiple plays to be able to get this. And don't be discouraged if you don't get it right the first time, right? If you try to be internet grandpa reading books and it doesn't catch fire, try something else, right? Like there's a zillion and one different ways to make money, but at least have a goal of I need to increase this income by 10%. And then hopefully you can do that within 3 to 6 months. Okay. Then the next goal is I need to add another 10%. And I would just give yourself little goals. Give them, every 3 to 6 months, how do I add 10%? Right. And that is something that you can do because ultimately, if you can add 20% of income or 30 or 40% of your income and you're not spending that money, that is all gravy, baby. That's all personal profit, right? That's going to kick down the line when we talk about your special teams and we talk about investing. So you don't have to be some multi-millionaire to get into the investment game, right? Like you just need to have more income than your expenses. So how do you get 10%, 20%, 40% of additional income?
Okay, so say you get that 10, 20, 30, 40% additional income. What are you doing with that income?
So I set up a sacred account, right? And we have actually a couple of these accounts that there's not checkbooks on, there's no debit cards on, that is not a rainy day fund. I don't use it when my transmission goes out or I need new tires, right? Like this is my future's money. I literally don't consider it my own money, right? If you put it in a 401k or something like that, you can't touch it without tax consequences, right? It's for later on in life. I think of the sacred account very much in the same way. It's literally not my money. It is my future self's money. And so I let that pile up until I'm ready to invest. And I want to use that time period as I am saving, as I'm potentially paying down bad debt, and then starting to save for my investments. I want to use that time period to learn a niche, to investigate what type of investments do I want to do. And for us, we chose real estate, right? We buy real estate. We hold real estate long-term. It provides cash flow and it provides, long-term appreciation. So we went that way, but I would say that you just need to have a difference between your income and your expenses, right? You need to have a profit, just like a business does. You need to have a personal profit or a family profit. It's what's left at the end of the month that goes into a sacred account. You build it up, 6 months, 12 months, however long it's going to take you to at least have some type of nest egg there to start your first investment.
All right, so we're done talking about offense, and I thought that we went over defense, but apparently we didn't go as deep as we want to go into defense. So let's bring this back here. Let's talk about defense now. What is our defensive team?
So your defense is all about your spending, right? It's your expenses. Just like a business has expenses, your family has expenses, right? So it's the same thing. You're trying to get to the same place, which is, essentially income minus expenses equals your profit, just like a business is, right? So the higher the profit, the more profitable your family is. The more profitable your family is, the more money you can invest. So essentially you're trying to do two things, right? You have two separate teams, your offense, your defense. You're trying to increase that income. And now we're talking about your defense. You're trying to decrease your spending. And this is kind of hard, right? You had to get on the same page with your spouse there. But ultimately, we went through this and you kind of set yourself up, and then I think you maintain. That's really the path that we took, is when we say I set ourselves up, we set ourselves up with a budget. And we said, okay, when we're budgeting, we're limiting or we're listing things into here's our hard expenses. We have to pay these things, right? Like these are our debts. Here's the rent or the mortgage, the utilities, the phone bill, the insurance. That's over there. And then there is other things that are like wants, and well, there's kind of needs and wants, and then there's just kind of fluff, right? Like that's BS. We don't need that at all. So we separated these categories, right? So you need food. You want to go out to restaurants, right? There's some difference there. So we separated things into these needs versus wants, and then there was clearly like a fluff, or maybe this is like our fun money kind of section. And we said, okay, here's a budget for these different things. And essentially you just separate them in categories. So we started with an app and we put everything into an app. And ultimately we got to a place where I think the same kind of goal is very similar to your offense where you want to increase by 10% and then get to 20%. I think it's the same way. You want to start by decreasing your expenses by 10% and then continue to cut down to 20%. So if you can think of it this way, if you're starting where you're at currently and you have two objectives, one, to increase your income by 20%, your second objective to decrease your expenses by 20%, there's roughly a 40% margin there, right? That you can get to within probably 90 days. If you can get to an extra 40% of your income in profit at the end of the month, here is 40% that I have left over. I can knock down bad debt. I can save into a sacred account. I can learn a niche that I want to invest in. And then I can start stockpiling money and again, start investing.
What I love about those money apps that are out there is that I think it makes you aware of how much you're spending on like certain categories. So for example, for us, we love to go out to eat. That's like one of our things. We just love it.
Laura's expensive.
He's expensive too. Okay. And so I think when we first started this, that was something that was really hard for us because we would only go out once a week. And so, because after we started putting our money into this app and at the end of the month, we saw how much money we were spending on going out. We're like, oh my gosh, I did not realize it was that much money. And so it was kind of a slap in the face in reality. And so I think that actually was probably the best thing for us when we first got started was seeing exactly how much you're spending in these things. Because if you are an avid spender on Amazon, or if you're going to Target, or if you collect baseball cards, or whatever it is you do, right, you're going to actually see the real number. And I think numbers are hard, right? Like they're the actual thing that's being expended upon, right? And so that is something that I highly recommend that you do with your spouse so that you can get on the same page and just strive toward that common goal.
Yeah, but not only doing it, you have to actually review it. I would suggest at minimum once a month, right? One person in the relationship should be going through putting this in, and you can sync it with your bank so you're not typing all these numbers. But you can sync it. One person should be in charge of it, or maybe both of you are. But you should at minimum review it at least every month, because this is where it's like that gut check moment. Like, oh, I didn't realize we just spent $2,200 on restaurants last month. Like that seems excessive.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. If you have that conversation like, babe, that didn't go to plan.
People are going to think we're so bougie. Like $2,200. That's just a random number that he chose. Okay.
Laura has $2,200 dinners. I told you she's expensive. But let's get back on track. So it makes it hard when the following month you're like, hey, let's go out to dinner. And you're like, do you know what we just spent last month?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we'll make dinner again, right? Like, and it may be restaurants. That is for us. It may be like clothes. It may be shoes. It may be whatever it is for you, right? But it makes it real practical and kind of uncomfortable when you say, hey, let's go do this again. You're like, no, but we just blew the budget last month and we saved not what we thought we were going to save. Mm-hmm. So I think of this defense in kind of two strategies here. There's like this setup, right? This is what we're talking about now. We're setting up the budget, and it's kind of some massaging, I think, the first 3 to 6 months, meaning you're putting things into categories and you're like, oh, that doesn't really fit. Like that was way over on food and we're way under on utilities, right? Like you can kind of spend the first couple months to figure it out. And then you get into a place where you get a repetition routine and you're pretty close, right? You're pretty close on these things. And so really once you can spend that 90 days or, 3-4 months and kind of get into that pattern and you're creating a new spending habit, then it's less work. You really don't have to revisit it very often, perhaps just a couple times a year, just to go through and make sure we're on the same page. And that's really not much work. I don't think that we spend much time on our defensive strategies after we built the defensive team. We spend most of our time and effort on our offensive team, bringing in new plays, continuing to invest, which brings in more income on our offensive team.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we got a good defense. We got a big line of defensive men right there. Our center, oh, he's good.
You're
sorry.
weird.
I know I'm weird. Sorry. Okay, so we talked about offense. We talked about defense. So what's the special teams? What is that?
Special teams is investing.
Okay.
Right? This is the end result. This is the why. Everything leads up to here. And I think this is the financial maturity when you get to this place, right? You have a lot of times you're told, by your parents, by culture, not to invest. Investing is risky. Don't do that. Just, save it in CDs or something like that, right? And I think once you get to a place where you're financially more intelligent and mature and you really focus, everything goes back to this third team. Everything for us is all based on our special teams. That is the only thing that matters. We are doing an offense and a defense for the only purpose of special teams, right? Because right now we are working. We have multiple companies that we are actively involved in our business. It's bringing in income, right? We are trading time for money, and we're young, so fine. That's how the system goes. You trade your time for money. You have to have profit. You have to save the profit. You have to learn to invest, and then you have to invest it. Once that investment kicks off additional income, that is when you are not trading your time for money, right? That money is coming in because of the work you already did in the past. So everything, as far as an end result, as far as getting to the financial freedom finish line, is how do I have more income coming in from my special teams than I have from my offensive team, right? If that makes, let me say it a different way. If you have $5,000 a month that your offensive team makes, this is your salary, your income, right? You're trading your time for money, you make $5,000 a month. And you get to a place where now your special teams makes more than that money, right? More than $5,000, and your expenses are less than that, you can stop working. You can not have an offense. You can still have your defense. You can obviously still spend money for your lifestyle, but you have passive income from your special teams that you're not trading your time for money on anymore. You've already done the work in the past, and now you're just reaping the reward. And that is a long-term, depending on your type of assets for the rest of your life, you can pass on to your kids type of special teams.
So it's when your passive income exceeds your active income.
Yeah.
That's financial freedom.
Yes. Or you could look at it when your passive income exceeds your expenses. Either way, however you want to look at it.
Well, if you want to achieve financial freedom, get your offensive line in order, get your defensive line in order, get your special teams in order, and play the financial football game. If you have a friend out there who loves football and who also needs to get their finances in order, make sure you share this with them. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this podcast. We'll see you next time.